welcome to the Alabama Renaissance Faire channel. Thank you for rejoining us for part 2 with my very special guest, William Freeman, on volunteering. See you in a few seconds and we're going to get into a really good discussion. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to the Alabama Renaissance Faire channel. For us, it's only been a few seconds, but for you, it's been a whole week. And this is part 2 with my very special guest, William Freeman.
Thanks for having me back.
All righty. Long break. 2-3 seconds.
Whew, I feel well rested.
All right. Today we're going to continue discussing volunteering, the feast, the fair. And I wanted to start off, and we had talked about volunteering. And physical limitations. Some of us has it. Sometimes we can only do just a very short amount of physical and then we're done for the day. Some of us can do even less. And some of us are perfect good health. So a person wants to start out and I say, well, I'm not ready for that physically, or what do I do? So we do have programs for all levels, correct?
Oh yeah, well, I'll go ahead and tell you. Number one, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but a lot of our volunteers are getting up in years. I mean, even myself, I'm soon to be approaching the big 5-0, whether I look it or not. I may look older than that, I don't know. But and a lot of our volunteers, at least some of the ones that are the most active, are getting up in years. And the older we get, our limitations physically become more apparent. And though I did stress the physical, because we are always in need of those, strong backs and muscles, but there's a lot of things that do not require that, because we understand a lot of us, we can't do what we used to could if we ever could. And as far as things that you can do, like we have the costume workshop that we have in the second weekend of October, where we make costumes for free. We discussed that when we did the video and I talked about creating a character. But as a volunteer, we have if you're a sewer, that's sitting down and sewing. So that doesn't require a lot of physical activity. If you can operate a sewing machine or a serger. We also need people, when people bring their fabric in, there's a specific way that you fold it first before you measure and cut. And it may be specific, but it ain't difficult because they let me do it. And so that's something that you don't necessarily require a lot of muscle power. And even if you're like, well, I can't stand on my feet, well, yeah, you can even sit down and have a partner standing and still, because all you do is got to fold it the right way and then boom, and then lay it on the table. And for the feast and the fair, there's getting out t-shirts, folding them. There's pinning. We have lots of banners that we hang on tables at the feast. You can hang those up with straight pins or safety pins. There's putting tablecloths on. We have, because we cannot use real candles, and if you've never been to the dinner, you may be like, oh no, yeah, we used to use real candles. We would rent the candle holders like you would see at weddings, and then we would also, the candelabra from weddings, and then we would also have people just bring in candles, and we had a whole bunch of candles and candle holders ourselves. But the fire marshal said that, we probably should never have an open flame at an event like that. And when we switched over to Christmas lights. So we have to have someone that, you just lay the lights at and you kind of tape them down to the table so that they don't fall off during the night. And little things like that, they don't require a lot of work. And then they're sorting the tablecloths once we get them dumped out on the floor. So there's lots of things. Now at the fair, we got to sort t-shirts, got to put out mugs, got to organize the tent so it looks nice. And then there's the fact, well, I need to sell. And during the event, you say, well, here again, I can't be on my feet. Well, we have plenty of room to put some chairs in the back, and then you just kind of sit down, and then you only stand up when a patron comes up and may want to buy something. And even then, if they're just wanting information, you don't necessarily have to stand up. You just say, well, my back, but I'll be glad to answer your question or whatever. So there's lots of things you can do that do not involve having to be physically active. And it's just a matter of finding out what that is. And if I've missed something, which I probably have, then there's going to be a lot that you can do. So don't let your physical limitation keep you from being a volunteer.
Sometimes you want the volunteer of your knowledge.
Oh, exactly. And even then, and knowledge, that's another good point. See, when I started this, I didn't have any knowledge at all. My medieval Renaissance knowledge, the only knowledge I had was what I learned from Hollywood. And it didn't take me long to realize that Hollywood got it wrong. If you watch the episode Medieval Speak where Lee Freeman, my brother, talked about his book, well, living with him, you learn real quick. You know, I don't go see movies with Lee if it's a historical movie because he's sitting there, oh, that armor's wrong. Oh, nope, they didn't have that. Nope, that's 200 years too early, or that's 200 years too late. Oh wait, that's the wrong sword. And you learn real quick, you know, so I learned, it didn't take me very long to figure out that Hollywood doesn't really get it right a lot. And so so what do? Well, I taught briefly that we do those demonstrations in schools and libraries and things. And one of the best ways that I learned was I knew people like my brother Lee and like Darlene, who she did hers about how the fair got started. And then another one of our big volunteers, Don Green, they go into school. They were going into schools for us. And Don was actually going into schools long before he joined the Round Table. And he has a whole sword and armor and just big displays of all show and tell items. And his daughters were like, hey, please, come in and entertain my class. And then when he joined the Round Table, he's the one that sort of lit that under us and said, well, why haven't we been doing more of that? And you go to these events, and even if you're just wearing a costume, that's still an entertainment opportunity because the kids are getting to see your costume. And you're still giving something back to the kids. You may say, well, I don't know anything, I can't do anything. Well, just being in a costume is enough. And then if you go to enough of these, and you sit there and you listen to the people that know, which is what I did. I listened to Don, I listened to Lee, I listened to Darlene and others, and then I learned. And it maybe, took when you go a couple of hundred, how many times we go, eventually it begins to stick in here. And I'm like, oh yes, perfect. And then that's how you learn. Or
that's how you make new friends.
Exactly.
And you slowly start getting the information that you've always wanted.
Yeah, or you do the quick and dirty method, buy Lee's book, read it, memorize it, and then but then you won't make friends. So just do both. Just buy the book and then go, because we're always doing those demonstrations. People ask, and the limitation for us is just, how far away is it? And if it's too far out of the Shoals area, then we'll ask for travel expenses, which is just, 55, 56 cents a mile, and then maybe some travel food. And if if you need a large group, if we like everybody, then we might have to rent a vehicle like a van. But other than that, now mention volunteering. Let's start with a feast because let's start with a workshop. The costume workshop is our very first volunteer thing that you can get involved with. And you say, well, I don't sew. I don't either. I can't even sew a button and without it falling off. So what I have learned over the years is I'm good at folding the fabric. And Lee does not sew either. And he's good at, because we want to make sure everyone gets, we have a number system where you show up, say I want a costume, we'll give you a number so that we know how many we've made and so that we can keep track of who goes ahead of who. And he's like, that's my job. I know the history and I can tell people kind of, well, this is kind of the outfit that you're looking at for this time period. And he's got lots of costume books and books.
Always on the table.
Yeah, and now we're not going to make you a super $500 fancy outfit, like I said in my video about character creation, but you'll get something simple. But he's like, I can hand out numbers, and I can give the history, and then I can fold the fabric. And then others, we have two other volunteers. They actually know how to work with a pattern, and they know how to take it. And once they get the fabric that I folded, they can measure you and they can cut it out. And then we have others who sew. And then you say, well, what about? Well, I can't. I don't do any of that. That doesn't interest me. Well, one thing we do, we have letters that we mail out to our entertainers and to our vendors, sort of like right before the fair. So to say, sort of a last minute thank you. We're glad you're coming. All that. But the envelopes have to be addressed, and we have a list. And you may say, well, hey, you get good penmanship, and you can write the addresses on the envelopes, and then get them ready to be put in the mail. And I know in some years we have lots of decorations made of brass that we put out for display, and they get kind of tarnished sitting in the trailer, and sometimes we take out the brasso, and we just have to. So those are things at the workshop that are easy, simple, and
Right.
and then I also teach medieval dancing. That's one of the things that I do, and I've taught medieval dancing at the workshop because it's a lull. And we do, and I know we have one volunteer in particular who is like, that's her favorite thing to do is dance. And whenever there's a lull, she's like, can we dance? And so I'll dance. And
If you can't dance, it's okay, because I have 2 left feet,
oh yeah,
and I laugh at myself probably harder than what, if you watch me dance, you're gonna laugh, but I'm laughing bigger than you can.
sure. And here
It's
again,
fun. Have fun.
yeah, and here again, that's another thing where, as a volunteer, that was something that none of us on the round table danced. And years ago, probably in the mid-90s, we had a lady who was one of our volunteers who wanted to dance, and she reached out to the SEA. We used to have an SEA chapter here, Society of Creative Anachronisms.
I was part of that.
Yeah, and now they're a group that we kind of lost touch with, but we've made touch base with a group out of Decatur again, and they've been to the fair and are coming back this year. We're so excited.
All right.
And yeah, that'd be good if we get to get them on this channel, which I'm sure they would love to do. But anyway, she knew a dance master from there who was going to school here at UNA, or no, it was the International. It was the Heritage Christian, is what it is now. It used to be IBC. He was going to the Christian school here, out on Hilton Drive in Florence, and he taught medieval dancing. So she's like, I'm going to get some roundtable members with some of his SEA folks, and we're going to dance at the feast. And we danced 8 dances that year at the feast. We did 2 sets of 4. And ever since then, I was like, why can't we dance? And it took like several years went by that I didn't dance. And then I don't remember if someone came to me or just hit me and said, well, we danced before, why can't we dance again? And no one was dancing. No one, either they didn't want to, didn't know how to. So it's just me as a volunteer was like, hey, what about dancing? And that's a lot of times what happens if you're a volunteer here, is something just it just hits. And it's not that anyone planned it. It's just somebody thought, oh, dancing. And so now we dance. And so we don't dance. We dance at least one dance, the tango, every year at the dinner, at our feast dinner. But some years, that's the only dance we do. And then other years, we might do 1 or 2 more. And
We did the one during the masquerade ball.
yeah,
When we did that one, we had so much fun.
And that was a new one that we had never done. And I wanted to do it, one, because you guys were representing Italy, and it was an Italian dance, and 2, it was one that had never been done. It was a little more difficult for the dancers. Now, if there are any true Renaissance medieval dancers watching this video, if I ever taught, you'd probably cringe, because I take steps and I dumb them down for kindergarten, because people who don't dance or have 2 left feet or 2 right feet, they need super, yeah, and I'm including myself in this, I need the basic steps. And so I dumb them way down to where, but the whole point is not that I'm getting this 100% correct, so much as you're dancing a dance that's hundreds of years old, that for all practical purposes, and the spirit of it's the same, even though the steps might be a little simplified. But now at the fair, for example, we never danced. And then it was about 8 years ago, one of our volunteers was like, hey, why don't we dance at the fair? Can we? And we never thought, and then boom. And then now that's something that I'm just like, well, why haven't we been doing that even, when we were, 20 years ago? Because it takes a volunteer, just randomly, it just came to them. And that's what happens with our group, is a lot of times there may not be any discussion, and just it hits, and then you say it. So if you decide to become a volunteer, don't worry if you're like, well, I don't know where's my niche, where am I going to fit? It may just suddenly hit with, oh, this is it.
One volunteer now, she runs the Magical Singers.
Exactly. See, for years we didn't have a group of singers, and then this lady, she came to us from Louisiana, and she was a high school choral director, and she was like, hey, what if we try to put together some singers, and just us, our volunteer group, And then we did pull some outside singers last year from the Florence Camerata, but most of it was us. And it was her, as a new volunteer, who just came in. Now, had she not came into the group, I don't know that we would ever thought singers, because
I enjoy it. I had a great time.
I mean, so those of us, and I mean, now I do sing, but I sing at church. Now let's move on quickly, because we're running out of time here, to the feast. The feast, we start setting up the feast on the Friday before. So I think the feast this year is going to be on the 20th. So on the 19th, which is the Friday, we'll get in there around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, maybe 8, depending on when they open. And then we will begin setting up. The tables have to be rearranged in the right order, tablecloths on them. We got to do the lights. And we have 2 sets of lights. We got white Christmas lights, just like you hang on your tree or hang outside on your front porch or over your awnings. And then we have the candle lights, like you would put in your window, that you would plug into the wall. Our good friend Don Green, our volunteer we've talked about before, he's taken these with some of his friends, because he's an electrician by trade, and he rewired them to put 4 of these candles on one cord. So normally they just come one, and you put it in your window and plug it in. Well, he's wired 4 together, and then they plug in. Maybe 2, but anyway, 2 to 4, and then so they got to be set on the table, and we take those down so that they don't fall over, because they're really wonky, wobbly. And then we also got to put the decorations. You mentioned in the last video, we got tapestries that we got to hang up. We got banners and flags that we have to pin up. We got flags that we kind of nail into the ground outside to sort of give a nice little run up to the feast hall. We got to put up those giant towers that Don created. And
a volunteer to put up the new plates for people who do not have their full sets. We provide that.
Yeah, then this year we've actually got wooden utensils and plates that we bought offline. So now considering the feast, I will say this: if you're a newcomer to the feast, you can decorate your table, and a lot of people don't know this, and I think that's on us for not advertising it more. But you can, because years ago our volunteers thought, oh, medieval people brought their tableware and they brought it with them. Well, no, we have since learned that they don't. Because if you go to dinner, like if I was to go to Chris's house tonight, I'm not going to bring my silverware and my plate with me, and that would look weird. But they didn't do it then, because whoever's hosting, they might be insulted if what you bring is better than what they've got. And it's whatever noble is hosting, it's their job to show off how much they have and how good they are. Right. So you're not going to bring, but it had been, people were doing it for so long, it's become tradition. And though we know it's really not historically accurate for people to bring a full set of dinnerware with them, it's become tradition. And so now, if you decorate your table, the king and queen, whoever's reigning that year, will choose the best table. And if your table wins at the end of the night, you'll get 2 free tickets to next year's dinner. And you can come in that Saturday morning.
2 free ones.
Yeah, 2 free. They're normally $25 each.
That's $50.
Now we get to the actual event itself, and well, you don't have to volunteer. But if you want to volunteer, you can help serve food if you want to do that. Or most of our volunteers, they're like, hey, I attend meetings, I do all this work, I want to eat. So they want to buy a ticket and just relax, enjoy themselves, and that's perfectly okay. Reward yourself. Buy your ticket and just sit down and enjoy yourself. You've worked for a day and a half putting this thing together. You're going to work all weekend for the fair, so why not enjoy yourself? And now I don't, because like I said, I'm sort of like the MC and all that. And then when it's over, we have to stay late and we tear everything down and put it back in the trailer that we store it in. And the more volunteers we have to take down and store it, the better. Now for the fair, it's the same kind of thing. We come in the Friday before the fair, and we have to set everything up. And that's really our booth. We have a tent that we set up and put a canvas over it to make it look medieval. And then we set up our stages, which is just really, we have some backdrops that we set up, and then we tie them down so that they don't get blown over by the wind. And then we have an archery set up that we put up so people can shoot a real bow and arrow and a crossbow. But we have them shooting up against a tarp and some hay so that they don't shoot someone that may be walking behind. And then that's the sort of things we do. And then we take everything down at the end of the event. And then during the event, you volunteer by simply just showing up in your costume. And if you want to volunteer at a booth, that's fine. Or you can just wander around and just add atmosphere to the event by just saying, I'm here. And then, and if you're an active volunteer, then you wear a staff badge at the event that you can pin to your costume. And that way, someone who may be a patron is going to question about something, they know, hey, I go to a volunteer with a badge, and that person's going to be, if they don't know the answer, they can direct me to someone that does. So that's a little bit about what we do as far as those 3 events and how, and as far as being involved, you just have to say, I want to be, show up, and then we will plug you in eventually, even if you don't do anything but do some simple decorating or some simple, like, I'm going to take these t-shirts out of this box and put them on this table, or I'm going to volunteer in the booth and sell them. You know, that's something simple and easy that you say, and then the longer you're with us, that gives you more time, and over time, you'll figure out where your niche is and what you're going to do. Just like I figured mine out, it just took 5 years before that hit me. But before, I still was active. I was still setting up, taking down, being an active member, wearing a costume, having a good time. It just took me a few years before what my role, and then of course I also I work with Cherie and Darlene and David Mitchell as our, we work on the online side, doing the website, the Facebook, and stuff like that. So that sort of fell into my lap. It wasn't something that when we finally realized social media was as good as it was going to be, we needed to be more active, and so that committee sort of sprang up, and we do that. So a lot of things just happen because they just do. And
so just volunteer your time, your ideas, your thoughts, your muscle, any kind of volunteer.
Yeah, but just reach out through YouTube, reach out through Facebook, reach out through the website, and just let someone know. And don't worry about logistics. You can live 10 minutes away or 5 hours away, and we'll find a way to plug you in, and you can be a part.
Thank you for joining our little chat today, our part 2 with William Freeman. And please share. Why not? If you're here for this time, you should be sharing this video because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of good family activities. And please click the subscribe button and ring the bell icon. And thank you, and join us next time. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.